Hey everybody, I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour, and I saw a movie the other night. Well, you saw the thumbnail and you saw the names. You know what the movie is. It was Raya and the Last Dragon. I didn't think I was going to like this, but we got about 10 minutes into this show, and I started thinking, wow, this is brave. They're doing something here that most people who make movies in this genre right now don't do. They try to tackle the question of the human problem, the human condition, using a character, a main character, who is flawed. What? Nobody does that. People write stories with Mary Sues, people who have no problems whatsoever, and all of their problems are external to them, and it's just how bad and dumb and ignorant everyone else is. And the thing the main character has to overcome anymore is often just believing in themselves, even if everybody else is backwards and incorrect, and maybe they'll come around. But the great stories, the ones that have changed your life, the ones that got into your blood and stuck with you and even formed the way you think about stuff or view yourself, the ones that have shaped your notions of heroism, aren't just stories of someone doing cool, slick ninja fighting combat moves for no reason. They're stories of people who first have to slay the inner dragon before they can slay the outer dragon. And I know that there are a ton of you who are kind enough to hang out with me on the internet, who are not people of faith per se. I know that is something we don't have in common, and yet we like each other, which is awesome. For me, as a person who thinks there's a God and a person of faith, I am pretty sold on the idea that not only is there evil within, not only are we intrinsically flawed, and we'll expand on that more in just a minute, but that when you put a few billion intrinsically flawed people on the planet together, that should only amplify our flaws. We have a human problem, and any story that doesn't acknowledge that we have a grand human problem that is born out of several individual human problems, I just don't think is a very honest story. But in Raya, I'm going to spoil everything here. You have got a main character, a young female character named Raya, and her dad is this idealist. He lives in this world of Kumandra, I think it's called. This place is just like Earth. It's very tribal. You got people who look very different and have very different values, and they share this space together, and they don't get along very well. And you get all of these different tribes on camera for the first time at the invitation of Raya's dad in an attempt to bring peace to the nations, to address what is wrong with them. And you see very quickly a Twitter war. I mean, just everybody's bickering, just like we do on the internet, just like we do with each other. Raya and her dad are a part of this ancient guild of guardians who protect this stone that was bequeathed to them by the dragons, this stone that produces goodness. And Raya is sweet. I mean, she's a super likable kid character. There's even a moment here where she gets baptized. I don't think that's an accident. But she still develops this sense of pride because she has this role. It's not a glaring character flaw, but I appreciate that even little young Raya had something she needed to improve on. So we get a little ways into the story, and it looks like this whole bring everybody together and make Kumandra this unified utopia. It looks like it maybe is going to work because of the vision of Raya's dad. But it doesn't work because of a betrayal. Raya gets betrayed by somebody she trusts and thinks that she can believe in, and she becomes calcified, which is a really big deal because in the story, the legend, the expositional dialogue that sets the whole thing up is about this evil that amplifies or leans into the depravity of humanity. And as people fight and bicker and are tribal and awful to each other, it awakens this ancient evil that's really always been there. But now they're given over to this ancient evil, almost a Romans 1 kind of scenario. And when unleashed by human depravity, this ancient evil transforms these people's bodies into a reflection of what their hearts actually are, and that is stone. But there are these dragons, this external force that are a metaphor for something external to the depravity of humanity that provides a goodness and a redemptiveness that broken people are not capable of on their own. And that was one of the really bold things about this story. The idea that no, like the power to solve this, in the Raya universe at least, is not entirely within you. There's some external rightness, righteousness, goodness that is needed. Now, the way the story unfolds, that is embodied in this dragon gem, and that's what Raya guards. And she makes this mistake. She trusts the wrong person. This person stabs her in the back, figuratively, and the stone is exposed. And all the leaders of the nations get together, and they're like, I want that stone. No, why should you have it? We want it. And they fight over it, and you can see where this is going. Like, yank on it and pull on it, and surprise, it breaks. It breaks into exactly the number of fragments that are equal to the number of warring tribes in this very broken world. This gem that embodies goodness and righteousness external to the human problem that had been crafted by the dragons was what was holding back this evil, and now the evil starts to overwhelm all the people again. So the shards get taken to the four corners of the world, and Raya, who is now a changed person after watching even her own dad get consumed by this ancient evil and be turned to stone. And after a few years of searching, she has this very religious encounter with Sisu, the dragon, who is the dragon that imparted this stone of righteousness to humanity all the way back in the day. But still, Raya has changed. She goes out as a somewhat hardened, somewhat broken person. This is very evocative of what happens to people in my experience, what happens to me in my experience when you see bridges get burned. When you have one or two relationships in the rearview mirror that are human wreckage, that eat at you and that you might want to fix, but you couldn't think of a way to do it, where your trust has been betrayed. And you get your trust betrayed in a big way once or twice, and then in small micro ways, 1 billion times every time you do anything on the internet. You get jaded and you get to a place where you don't trust other people. You might still be walking around, but that is a pathway to having our hearts turned to stone, to getting to a place where forgiveness can't happen, where we're obsessed with other people's failings, where we're eager to keep an eye out for other people's failings through the lenses of a grid, a matrix we spend a ton of time thinking about and nurturing and developing so that it perfectly bends around our own behavior. So we always look good, but everybody else is bad. And if we can get other people to agree to our matrix, and we can go around and burn them down because of how bad and wrong they are. And it never occurs to us in this matrix that forgiveness is the only way through. That world is represented in this movie, and it's tough to see this flawed but still really cool little young girl grow up into this more hardened, not yet fully stone, but jaded girl who still, out of love of her father, is going to go on this quest to try to put the gem back together and see if she can defeat this ancient evil. Well, along the way, as is the case in any good story, she discovers that she is going to have to remove the log from her own eye before she can deal with the speck in everybody else's eye. So as she recovers these gems, she meets someone from all of these different tribes who's been hurt by the human problem, who's both contributed to it and been hurt by it. Everybody she meets is flawed. But they join her on her quest, and along the way, without ever really recognizing it, it is their mutual failure that causes them to like each other and to find common cause and to find forgiveness without ever even really saying it or having a big ceremony. And this fellowship, this league of broken people who've contributed to brokenness, go on this journey that ultimately culminates in Raya having to face the person who betrayed her. And that, for all Raya has learned, is just a little too much. She can't make that final leap. And the result of that final showdown is that her mistrust and not forgiveness and even simmering hatred toward her rival, who she has a perfectly justified reason to be angry at, it results in the death of someone else who she loves. And she has culpability in that. Well, the way the story rounds out is that event seems to have been enough to shake Raya out of the fog of her unforgiveness, of her inability to forgive and even restore, redeem a broken relationship, reestablish trust for common good, for the common cause of defeating the evil within and without together. And then ultimately in the end, that internal lesson that she learns proves to be contagious. Forgiveness is the way, And in the same way that ancient evil is contagious and it just jumps from person to person and turns them to stone, this external good that is bequeathed to Raya and that she recognizes and begins to nurture in herself is also contagious. And other people start to imitate that, and redemption occurs. I think this movie is about the human problem. I think it's trying to acknowledge that we all have ownership in whatever messes we see in the world. I think it's an acknowledgement that we are depraved. We are fundamentally broken as beings, but it also acknowledges that there is an external rightness, an external righteousness, which is exactly what the document I spend all my time thinking about says, that there is this righteousness apart from human behavior that is exclusively from God, and this external thing is the thing which can regenerate the emotionally, the spiritually dead. Those who have turned to stone can be brought back to life by the external rightness of the work of God. And then beyond that, it's not just life, but it's this life that imitates the values and virtues of that external rightness, the values and virtues of God, and that stuff is contagious as well. I think this is a neat show. I'd encourage you to check it out if you haven't already, and I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts. I appreciate you bumming around with me. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour. Let's do this again soon.